So hi everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar on retiring in Israel. My name is Rafi Shulman. I just want to start by thanking everybody that's joined us tonight. We have four amazing panelists, and so I'll just go around and briefly introduce each of them, and then when they get to their part, they can talk to you a little bit about what they do. So we'll start with Rose and Gary Scharlat, who made Aliyah a few years ago in their 70s and are the epitome of happiness. I don't think I've met a couple that's happier in Israel, and it's just amazing that they've joined us tonight, so thank you. Ayala Laub, who's the director of the Shira Pransky Project, and she's going to talk about the so important topic of healthcare. And last but not least, we have Kim Bash from Kim Bash Realty, who's going to talk about finding a home in Israel. So life in Israel is challenging. It's something that I think we all have experienced, the challenges of adjusting to life in Israel. And this is really why I started Olim Advisors back in 2017. We had two goals in mind. The first goal was to help people make the decisions, the pre-Aliyah decisions, finding a community, finding schools for the kids, finding the ideal home. So those are some of the decisions that we help with pre-Aliyah. And then of course, once you get to Israel, the challenges you have to deal with once you're here, the bureaucracy, opening up a bank account, going to the government offices and so on, and just dealing with day-to-day challenges. Over the years, I think we've all dealt with Olim in different ages. So you have the singles, the lone soldiers that have come, you have the young couples, the young families, the older families, and last but not least, people who are thinking about retiring. And what we found is that each group has their own challenges, has their own needs. And so what we decided to do is come together and to offer this webinar specifically to people who are thinking about retiring. So with that in mind, I'd like to hand it over to Rose and Gary, who can talk to you about their life in Israel as a retired couple.
Hi, everybody. We're happy to be here and to share our experiences with you. It all got started because we followed our children. Our daughter and son-in-law made Aliyah 23 years ago. So we kept visiting. First, when our son and daughter were in yeshiva, we came to visit yeshiva and seminary. And then once our daughter moved here, then we would come at least once every year. I didn't dream of Aliyah, but Gary certainly did. And he was ready to make Aliyah long before I was.
I just have to say that at one point, I was in one end of our shul in West Orange saying, we're making Aliyah next year. And Rose was in the other end saying, I don't think we're going. And then my son said, you're not going. So now, anyway, our son decided, our son and daughter-in-law made an announcement in 2014 that they were making Aliyah. So it made perfect sense. If they were going to all be in Israel and our grandchildren were going to be in Israel, Rose came up with the idea that we should make Aliyah.
Anyway, we made a pilot trip in 2014 and came for Rosh Hashanah through all of the Yom Tovim, but spent the last 2 weeks we went to Efrat to start, spent the last 2 weeks in Modi'in. And when we came into the shul in Modi'in, I felt very, very comfortable. I felt it was something that I was used to. It was more of a community shul. And I really felt that this was a good place for us. We had very close friends, our next door neighbors from West Orange invited us for a meal with 3 couples that we had never met before. And when we left that meal,
Rose said, I could live here. And I said, you got me at hello.
So that was the end of October, beginning of November. We went home, we put our house on the market. It sold immediately. And we did whatever we had to do to make Aliyah. We chose the date of March 25th because I was having my second knee operated on in America in the first week of January. So we gave ourselves 3 months for me to recuperate and be ready to travel.
Okay, so we moved to Modine. Why are we in Modine? You heard a little bit about the fact that the shul is our kind of shul. The social life here is wonderful. We have a lot of wonderful friends. It's a centrally located city. The transportation is excellent. We have a great social life, as I said. It's really a city that's being built around us. There's one section of Modine that has 17 cranes working, building a neighborhood of 4,000 units. I don't think that's happening anywhere else in the world.
But we live in the Buchman section. We live 1 block from the shul. We're surrounded by, we have a group called Modine Seniors. There's about 60 to 75 people in the group, and the ages run from
60 to 90.
And
Nobody's old, by the way.
right, we're all young. Gary got involved. Lots happen when you're invited out. You can tell about your farm.
Our daily life. What's our daily life like? Well, a month after we were here, we were again having Shabbos lunch. It seems to be a very good thing to do. And people asked what I was going to do. What are you going to do here? The word retire is not in my vocabulary. It's repurpose. That's what you should think about. You repurpose. You don't retire here. I said I was going to do some hydroponic or aquaponic farming, vertical farming. That's what I was interested in. But it was going to take me a little time. I don't know anything about Israel as far as that's concerned. Someone said, no, I have a friend who has a garden. You can't really take care of it. Maybe you can help. It's now my garden. It's been my garden for almost 6 years. I recycle all my products that I use in the garden. I've built a pool with goldfish, dug a pool there. I'm raising tomatoes and peppers and squash and cucumbers and kohlrabi. Everything you want. I even did artichoke. Okay, that keeps me busy about 20 hours a week. I also volunteer for SARL, which is a civilian volunteer program with the Army. So you actually go and live on the Army base for a week in uniform, sleep in the barracks, eat with the soldiers, and do work that soldiers would have to do, but we free them to do other work that's more important for them to do. I volunteered in a school for 2 years as an English supplement teacher for 1 day a week.
Okay, now me.
Okay.
So the same friend who introduced Gary to gardening said to me, you must come to the Hadassah meeting. I had never been a member of Hadassah in America. I was a member of Amit, but I went to the meeting and met somebody, a friend of mine from 40 years ago that I hadn't seen in all those years. And somehow or other, I got very involved, and I'm now the co-president of the English-speaking chapter of Hadassah here in Modine. I have a wonderful co-president, and we have about 130 members. We have a monthly program in English, and we raise funds for different projects for Hadassah Hospital. I've become passionate about this, and I treat it as it's my full-time job.
It is.
My full-time love, I have to say. But there are so many other things that I do. I will say that I do play canasta once a week, and I play mahjong at least once a week. But there are book clubs and bridge clubs and art classes and knitting groups and Hebrew classes and volunteer for teaching students. There is no end of things that you can be involved in.
Let me just say this, and then I want to talk a little bit about health. If you're worried about having friends in Israel and leaving your comfort zone in your community, I'll just say this to you. If you have friends in America, wherever you're living now, you're going to have friends here. It's that kind of a life. People welcome you. it's an unbelievable situation.
I also want to say that there are concerts to attend right here in Modi'in. You don't have to go to Yerushalayim, where there are plenty of concerts, and Tel Aviv, and all over, and a lot. And people are on the move here.
The health system. We're very happy with the health system. It's socialized medicine, but there's actually 4 different kupas, or I like to think of them as separate companies within the system. So they compete with each other. So they keep improving what they're doing. Doctors are readily available. Your family doctor, so to speak, is readily available. If you need a specialist, sometimes there's a wait for certain things. Sometimes you go for an MRI 2 o'clock in the morning. That can happen. But if you need a specialist, you can get to that specialist when you need them. There are systems, there are places in the system where you can kind of jump the line and get there. But I'm going to let the health expert talk about that. We're very happy with it.
I just want to say that during Corona, I had 2 surgeries, a cataract surgery and actually an emergency surgery. And both experiences were excellent. So that's our experience.
Okay. Thank you for listening to us.
Somebody asked, I saw a question.
Rose, we'll get to the questions. One thing I forgot to mention is that we'll get to the Q&A session at the end, because I want to just keep the presentation going. So if you have any questions, if anyone has any questions, put them in the chat window, and then we'll go back to them at the end. So thanks so much, Rose and Gary. Thanks so much for your input and your insight. I think we'll also, at the end of the presentation, I'll share their email address with anybody that wants to reach out to them. They're happy to talk to you and answer any questions that you have. So thank you for joining us tonight. Okay, moving on to Ayala, to the healthcare.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Hi, my name is Ayala Laub. I'm the director of the Shira Pransky Project. Before I tell you what the Shira Pransky Project is, my parents would kill me if I didn't just acknowledge Rose and Gary one more time. We are big Scharlat fans over here in my family. I have known them, I don't know, I guess they've known me my whole life. I've known them my whole life. So it's always great to see them, and really always just a joy to hear from them. So I'm really excited to be with them here tonight, and of course the rest of the panel for having me. What we do at the Shira Pransky Project is we try to make the wonderful healthcare system that exists easier for Olim. So while the healthcare system here does have a lot of benefits, oftentimes Olim aren't aware of them because there's very little information available in English. Sometimes doctors don't speak English. There is sometimes has a tendency to be a slight lack of what we call cultural competence. So we're here to help you with that. We translate, we have over 700 pages of healthcare and medical related rights translated to English. And we offer personal assistance for anyone who needs, and of course speak at places like this. So I'm going to talk to you tonight a little bit about healthcare. My focus, again, because the panel is about retirees, that's going to be my focus. If people, of course, have questions after, you can always email the office and someone will get back to you. I'll walk you through it. We can tell you about other workshops that go on if you need more expansive help. But for, again, like I said, tonight we're going to talk about retirees. So as you see here, we have in the box here, like Gary said, there are 4 Kupot Cholim. It is actually one of the most brilliant things, I'm with you, Gary, that Israel did, is basically took a socialized medical system and in some way privatized it. And it creates this really wonderful situation where ultimately the government pays for everything, but there also is a level of competition because each kupa has a vested interest in acquiring more patients because therefore they get more money from the government. So it is a great system. There are 4 Kupot Cholim, Klalit, Maccabi, Meocharet, and Leumit. I list them in size order. None of them are paying me, I promise. You'll choose one. You'll choose one based on where you live, or ask me which one to choose. Don't worry about it. And the thing that I always start with when I'm talking to people who are planning on retiring here is before we get into the nitty-gritty and all the tough stuff, you will be taken care of. And I don't want anyone to worry about that. You make Aliyah, you move to Israel, you will get to choose your kupa, you will get to be part of a healthcare system, and you don't need to worry. It's not like the US, you don't have to worry, about crazy deductibles. You don't have to worry about pre-existing conditions. You don't have to worry about any of those things. Ultimately, you will be taken care of. You just have to, know the tips and tricks and practically how to do it. So that's the first thing I start with, because really I know it's incredibly stressful. But you will land, you'll make Aliyah, you'll get your Teudat Zehut, you will join a Kupat Cholim, you need to see a doctor, you'll be able to see a doctor, don't worry about it. In terms of preparing for Aliyah as a retiree, there are a few things that I think are very important, particularly for this demographic. The first thing is coming with a medical summary, and that's going to lead into the second thing here, which is about medication coverage. But you have to understand that from the Israeli government's perspective, they don't know you. So if you show up after you move here and you say, oh, hey, yeah, so by the way, I had this surgery and I've, been taking this medication for this many years and I have this diagnosis, and you don't come with a letter from a doctor that says that, there are some doctors who might believe you, but there are also some doctors who might not. And in order for you to have as smooth a transition as possible, I strongly, strongly recommend everyone come to Israel with a medical summary. You don't have to come with a 12-inch binder, just like, 1 page, 2 pages, stuff like that just says, and it says from your doctor. It should include any diagnosis that you have, any medications you've been taking, any recent surgeries, anything like that, because that way when you come, you'll start with your new doctor, you'll be able to transition more smoothly. They'll understand your medical situation. And, unfortunately, we have had situations where people have come to us and said, I've been dealing with this issue for 20 years and now they want to send me for all these tests I did already because they don't believe me, which seems ridiculous, but you also obviously understand that a doctor needs to know who the patient is and that the situation is real and things like that. So that's my first major point about retiring in Israel is really please don't come empty-handed. Again, not a 12-inch binder, but just something, a letter from your doctor, your treating specialist that's signed, that says what your situation is, all the information. That's really the most important thing you can do when you come here. The next thing I'm going to talk about is medication coverage. This is a really big one because, a lot of people are on a lot of medication, but sometimes people who are a little older are on more medications for longer. And people get really, really confused when it comes to medications in Israel. So I'm going to explain to you how medications in Israel work. And I'm going to explain to you kind of what the issues you can run into, how to resolve those issues, stuff like that. So the most important thing to understand in Israel is these 4 Kupot Cholim have to cover you for whatever the government and Misrad HaBriut votes is in the Sal HaBriut, in the health basket. And that's going to include all medications, okay? So every year or every other year or every few years, depending on, how well the government's doing, the government will vote and determine that these medications are included in the healthcare basket. And that means that anyone who is entitled to take this drug, it'll be covered, all of that stuff. The thing is, and this is especially important if you're coming from the US, is that not all medications that you might be taking in the US are going to be covered in Israel. That doesn't mean that there isn't a medication that they will cover that is for your issue. For example, let's say diabetes. There are certain medications that many people are prescribed in the US that are not typically covered in the health basket here. And it's something that's really important to be aware of because, this is why we recommend actually 6 months in advance of your Aliyah to contact the Shira Pransky Project and actually send us a list of your medications so we can review with you and you can understand to be best prepared and understand which medications it's going to be easy, chick-chock. You're going to go in, show them your medical summary, they're going to write you that prescription, which medications might be more difficult to get and which really are not available to be covered at all. It's important to understand that and do some research in advance. There are places online you can look. You can also, of course, contact us. So that's a general thing about medication. The other thing to understand, and this is going back to the medical summaries and why they're so important, is that there are certain medications in Israel that are called second line of defense drugs. How it works really in the US, if you have private insurance, obviously it varies, but more or less if your doctor prescribes you a medication, if your insurance, is good and covers medications, it'll be covered. And that's kind of what it is. In Israel, there are certain medications that have criteria for being covered. So for example, they're going back to diabetes. Something like metformin, glucomin will be pretty, across the board covered. Something more like a Januit type of thing, which is very popular in the US, is not typically covered in Israel. And if it's covered, you need to meet a very specific list of criteria. And this is true of a lot of other medications. Again, things like, I'm trying to think of very common medications. Things like a Lipitor equivalent is going to be easily covered in Israel. It might be a different name, so just be prepared that it might be under a different name, but it'll be easily covered. But again, these other second line of defense medications, you need to have real proof that this medication is better for you and that you meet this criteria. And that's going back to where the medical summary comes in. If you come to Israel and you come prepared, right, and you have a letter from your doctor that says you've tried medication X and it didn't work, and that's why you're on medication Y, you're going to have a much easier time getting that covered and getting into the system here than if you come with nothing. And even if you come with that, you have to be prepared for the fact that there might be some time of, turnaround. And that's why we also recommend to bring 3 to 6 months of your current medication with you. There might be some time on the turnaround of making sure getting those approvals for those medications, and really contact us in advance, because we don't want people to get stuck here. If you're before Aliyah, if you're here already, it's okay. We'll help you anyway. But if you are pre-Aliyah and you do need help, you can email us and we will go through every single one of your medications, and we'll tell you exactly what the criteria for each medication are. We'll tell you what the alternatives that are available here. We'll tell you exactly how to get that. And it's really, really important that you take care of that in advance. And it's just something to be aware of. Again, like I said, being prepared is if, let's say, you contact us and we find out that there is a medication that really is not available here. So maybe before you come, your current treating doctor in the US or wherever you're coming from can already start transitioning you to a new medication so that you have time, some sort of overlap. So that's about medications. It's a little short because we don't have a ton of time, but for a really, I know it's a scary, overwhelming subject, but like I said at the beginning, you will be taken care of ultimately. It really might be a little different than what you're used to, but if we do the work and we help each other and work together, it will get done. The last topic I'm going to discuss, and then I'll just end with a few tips that I like to give in general, not necessarily related to retirees, but to everyone, is the subject of Bituach Leumi after retirement. This comes up a lot at the Shira Pransky Project. People are pretty concerned about it. For anyone who's not aware, Bituach Leumi is a national insurance institute. They're responsible for basically all of your welfare. They technically oversee the healthcare system, although they're not directly responsible for it. They're responsible for any disability, any long-term care, any of those types of things. So it's really important to understand is that if you move to Israel after legal retirement age, which for a man is 67 and a woman is 62, you cannot apply for disability insurance. And so this is something that's important in a panel like this, because is this something that I think you should plan your whole life around? Not necessarily. But if you are someone that's considering Aliyah, let's say, and you're debating, you're not sure, late 50s, early 60s, mid 60s, and you're not sure, and you think or you know that you would be someone who would qualify for disability insurance, you need to come before the legal retirement age. Once you come after the legal retirement age, you cannot get disability, and the only thing that you can qualify for is it's called CUD. It's long-term care insurance, and this insurance benefit is much more difficult to get because in order to qualify for it, you have to show a serious loss in your activities of daily living. So if you are someone that does suffer from some sort of physical, mental disability, anything like that, and you believe that you will qualify for disability insurance, definitely look into seeing if it's worth it for you to come. Again, I'm not telling you if you're planning on coming at 75, I'm not telling you to move your Aliyah up 13 years, okay? No one's telling you that. But if you thought you were gonna come at 63, you might be worth it to come at 61 and a half. So that's an important point about Bituach Leumi. And then I guess before I finish, I'll just end with a few tips and tricks about navigating the Israeli healthcare system. I'm going to repeat this again because I think it's so important, but I'll phrase it a little differently, I guess. I always like to say manage your expectations, and I don't say that in a negative way. I really, really don't. Like Gary said, like I'm sure a lot of you have heard, the Israeli healthcare system here is really, really excellent. And ultimately, even if it's an MRI at 2 a.m. or something weird like that, they're going to take care of you. They want to take care of you. But you have to come with the expectation that it's not going to be what it's like where you came from. You have to understand that there isn't really such a thing in this country as calling your doctor directly whenever you want. If you call their office, they'll call you back. They have to call you back, but it works differently than in Chutz La'aretz. A lot of people are used to their private doctor's office. They call them, they have, a direct line to them. That's not really how it works here. That doesn't mean that you can't communicate with your doctor. It doesn't mean they're not going to take care of you. It means you have to manage your expectations and, understand that Israel, for good and for bad, has some different things about it. The other tip that I'm going to recommend to everyone is look into supplemental insurance. Again, you can email us if you want more information. I could give a 3-hour lecture on supplemental insurance, but I'll spare everyone tonight. Look into supplemental insurance. It really offers a lot of benefits, especially for like retirees and up that age bracket. It really offers a lot of benefits. Once you do get to a certain age, it tends to become a little pricier, but it is something that I think can be worthwhile. So just something to think about, just have that in your head. It's not something you have to worry about this second, but know that supplemental insurance here exists. They can't deny for pre-existing conditions, and certainly look into it. And my last couple of tips to you are, first of all, understand that you have to be your own advocate. It's really hard sometimes, especially with the Hebrew. We're here to help you. I'm sure Rose and Gary are there to help you too. People who can help will help you, and you should definitely, use your resources, lean on friends, all those types of things, but really understand that there's not going to be any particular person who's going to be managing your medical care. You really are going to have to be on top of it. You have to be on top of making appointments. You have to be on top of getting referrals. You have to be on top of all of those types of things. So just understand that that's something that you will have to do, but that ultimately the healthcare system is here to take care of you. And if you need any help, feel free to contact us. That's what we do all day.
Thank you, Ayala. I can speak from personal experience. We've referred a number of people to the organization, to Ayala and her team, and they're just amazing. It's a morning, afternoon, and night, and just the response and the detail and the care is just second to none. So thanks so much again for joining us and for the information. I know that everybody really appreciates it. Okay, now we're going to switch gears to making Aliyah. There are really three things that you should keep in mind in the pre-Aliyah stage. The first one is budgeting. What's the cost of living in Israel? The second one is healthcare, which Ayala talked about, and I'll just touch upon a couple of points. And the last thing is finding a community in a home. And Kim's going to talk about some opportunities in a little bit. Let's start with budgeting. I know that's a concern that a lot of people have, and I think it's an important point to really think through. No matter where you live, whether you're living in US, UK, South Africa, Australia, you want to make sure that you live within your means. And when you move, you want to make sure that you understand what the monthly costs are. I'm not talking about buying a car and buying a house, because those are all personal decisions, but I am talking about your ongoing month-to-month costs. You want to make sure that you're not under any kind of financial stress when you get to Israel, and I know that's a big worry for a lot of people. So Nefesh B'Nefesh has a great calculator or an estimate for cost for the different groups, and I'll go through that with you and just kind of hit some of the main expenses. So just as a ballpark figure, for an average couple 55 plus, it costs somewhere between 10,000 to 18,000 shekels. So somewhere between $3,000 to $5,500 per month. Okay, again, it's a range. And so what goes into that? So I'll go through some of the main expenses. The first thing is rent. So of course it depends on where you live, but on average rent costs somewhere between 3,500 shekel to 6,500 shekel a month. So somewhere between $1,000 or $1,100 to about $2,000 per month. Okay, so that's the first category. The second thing is food. And so that's somewhere in the neighborhood of about 2,000 shekel per month to about 28 shekel. Now, of course, it depends on what you buy. If you go and you have steak 5 times a week, then, your food bill is going to be probably a little higher than that. But it's somewhere in the neighborhood of about $550 per month to about $850 per month is the average food bill. Then you have your phone, your cell phone, your internet. And again, it depends on the plan, but that will run you somewhere between 550 shekel per month to about 900 shekel per month, or about $150 to about $260. Then staying in the utility category, the water, electric, your gas will probably cost about 525 shekel per month to about 1,000 shekel per month, or about $150 to about $300 per month. Then you have your municipal taxes, or the arnona, depending again on where you live and the size of your place. That will range between 250 shekel per month to about 800 shekel per month, or about $70 to about 220. Keep in mind that Olim do have a discount in the first year. So when you come here, you want to definitely make sure that you take advantage of that discount when it comes to arnona. The next cost is health insurance. And so as I mentioned, you have the free and then you have the supplemental. Supplemental can cost you anywhere from nothing if you don't want to take it, although I think both Ayala and I agree that it's important that you should, look into it and seriously consider it. And so it will cost you somewhere in the neighborhood of, from 0 up to about 900 shekel per month, or from, up to about $250 per month or so. And then you have additional insurance. So, moving away from the health insurance, you have life insurance, the home insurance, other kind of insurances that you might want to take on your car. And that can range anywhere from about 700 shekel a month to about 1,000 shekel a month. So about $200 to $300 per month. Then you have transportation, and Gary and Rose talked about it a little bit. A lot of people don't need a car if you're living in one of the cities with a transportation. And that's one of the strengths of Israel is you have the buses and you have the trains now that are running. Then this is going to be lower. But assuming that you have a car, for your fuel and your maintenance will probably run about 1,700 shekel to about 2,200 shekel per month. And that, somewhere from about $500 to about $650 per month. And as you can see, gas is expensive in Israel. And of course, it depends on where you travel. But, that is an important expense to keep in mind. Then you have entertainment. And as Rose was saying, there's a lot of fun things to do here. And there's a lot of free things to do. But if you do want to go to the concert, or if you want to go to, to an activity or a restaurant, the average is somewhere between 500 shekel to about 1,200 shekel, somewhere between 150 to 350 dollars per month. And last but not least is, exercise, whether you belong to a gym or a yoga or some other kind of class, that will cost you somewhere between 200 to 600 shekel per month, or somewhere between $60 to $160. So you can see how it's broken down. Again, it can really vary dramatically. If you live in Tel Aviv or Yerushalayim, the rent's going to be a lot more expensive than living in Haifa or Nahariya, but at least this gives you some sense of costs. And if you have any questions, of course, you can contact me and we can go through it. So that's the first thing, is the cost of living in Israel. The second one is healthcare, and just a few other points that I want to keep in mind. I want to mention to you. So, one question that comes up a lot now is making Aliyah during Corona. And I want to tell you that there are a lot of people that are still coming, and there are retirees that are coming. And I think it's something that, you need to be aware of. And I would recommend you reach out to Ayala and the Shira Pransky Project to see, where things stand from a Corona point of view and vaccination point of view. And Ayala, I don't know if you wanted to chime in quickly and talk about
I can talk if you want me to mention just about vaccines.
That'd be great.
Just really quickly. So, I'm sure most of you are aware that Israel's vaccine distribution has been beyond, I think, anyone's expectations. And it's really going extremely well. I believe that at this point we're nearing 50% past their second dose, which is really an amazing feat. The vaccine, of course, is free. You don't need a referral. And how it works when you make Aliyah is that you'll get here. You are not allowed to get a vaccine while you're in quarantine for those 2 weeks. The quarantine can be short to 10 days, but basically as soon as you are in the system, which is usually like fairly shortly after you arrive, or certainly fairly shortly after you would come out of quarantine, you can pretty instantly make an appointment for a vaccine. If you're over 50, you will probably get an appointment like the same day or the day later. And once you go for your first appointment, they automatically schedule you for your second one. So certainly that, is available. Again, you have to wait for the quarantine because you are not allowed to leave quarantine to get a vaccine. Pretty much as soon as you finish your quarantine, you're eligible to get a vaccine, and I'm sure they'll take you very happily.
Thank you. Okay, so healthcare, we talked about coming Corona. The other thing, as Gary and Rose and I talked about is also choosing the right kuppah. So the services that are provided are pretty similar between the different HMOs or the different organizations. What we typically recommend is that you find the kuppah that has the most English speakers or whatever language you feel comfortable speaking in your neighborhood. So cities are known to kind of have certain kuppahs that are bigger or stronger, but even within a city, you want to check and see, you want to talk to people and see, maybe in a specific neighborhood, like, Modi'in has different neighborhoods, every city has their neighborhoods. You want to talk to people and see where, which kuppah has the most doctors, and especially if you need a specialist. And so this is something where you'll find that not all specialists belong to all kuppot. And so if you need a cardiologist or some other kind of doctor specialist, you want to make sure that the doctor accepts the kuppah as part of the kuppah that you join. And what I would actually recommend is that you try and find that out before you come to Israel. And a lot of doctors in the US and around the world have colleagues in Israel. So, if it's an oncologist or whatever the case might be, see if they can recommend somebody in Israel. See if you can get some recommendations so that you can reach out to them before you make Aliyah. Talk to them about their situation. If there's medication involved, I think that's something that is really helpful and part of your decision as to which kuppah you choose. So that's healthcare. And then the third thing is choosing a community and finding a home. And what I'd recommend that you do, of course, before you make Aliyah, is make a list of priorities. Everyone has their own list, and make a list of preferences and then prioritize. So budget is a big thing. If you want to live in Yerushalayim, but you can't afford to, then that's a factor you really need to think about. Do you want an Anglo community, or do you want more of an Israeli flavor? That really opens up the options. Do you want to live near family, or maybe far away from family, depending on your relationship with your family? That's something that you want to keep in mind. How are you going to get around? Again, for a lot of people, driving in Israel is scary. My mom, who stays with us a few months a year, drives in New Jersey, but doesn't want to drive in Israel. And so, choosing, if you need to be in a city that has the transportation, then that's a factor. And then thinking about the beach and the weather, right? A lot of people have dreamed about living by the beach. They want the nice warm weather. Maybe they're coming from Chicago, and for them, that's really a changing pace. And so you have that option here, right? And it's doable. And there's a lot of amazing communities that you can move to that are on the beach that have nice weather. And that kind of leads into another point that I feel strongly, and I know that Kim does as well, which is being open-minded. There's the communities that everyone's heard about, the Modi'in, Omad Bet Shemesh, Ra'anana. But if you want to experiment a little bit, if you're open to maybe living in a community that's an up-and-coming community, if you want to live by the beach, there's Ashkelon and Nairia that are now, popping up and becoming more popular. Being open-minded and having that flexibility, and especially if you're retiring and you don't have to live in the Merkaz, in the center of Israel, I really would recommend that you look at other options and say, hey, what else is out there? Because you might be very pleasantly surprised. And last but not least, talk to people who live in that community. I think that we can all give you feedback, and Kim's done a series of spotlights in different communities, but there's nothing better than talking to Rose and Gary about Modi'in, talking to people who live in Ramat Bet Shemesh and Haifa, and let them talk to you about the community, really the inside information. And I think that will really give you a true sense of what the community is like, and will help you decide if it's for you. So that's the pre-Aliyah. I wanted to just talk about a few post-Aliyah things that you should expect and plan for. So the first thing is, think about appliances. One of the shocks that people have when they rent or they buy is very often the apartment is empty. When I mean empty, I mean empty. You're lucky if you get a light bulb. There's no appliances, there's no closets. And so you want to think about it. And we can help you. We have great relationships with appliance stores. So in fact, you can buy things before you get to Israel, and they can have them delivered to your house. So you have a fridge, you have an oven when you get into Israel, and you can actually, you don't have to order takeout for the first month. Although, that's a positive thing too sometimes to do. How are you going to get around, right? We talked about it. For the first month or the first 2 months before you buy a car, if you decide you want to, are you going to be taking taxis? Are you going to be, just walking around? You want to give that some thought. Then the bureaucracy is something that a lot of people are concerned about and intimidated by. It's opening up the bank account. It's going to the government offices. And it's something like we've all said, you can do it. And we're here at Olim Advisors to help you through the process, because if you know what you're doing, and if you go with somebody, if you speak the language, it's something that isn't as bad as it sounds. But you definitely need to make sure that you do the research before and plan for that. And the same thing applies to getting put into the system in Israel. You want to make sure that your status is recorded correctly. You want to make sure that you get the benefits. So, for example, there are senior citizen certificates that you can get for men if they're 66 and 4 months or older, and for women it's 61 and 4 months. And with the certificate, you actually get a lot of discounts to parks and concerts and plays and transportation. So you want to make sure that you're aware of that and that you get that once you're in Israel. Another thing is that you want to make sure that you think about Ulpan, about the language, right? For a lot of people, if you're not planning on making Aliyah for another few months or few years, one of the things that can really, really help you is try and learn the basic Hebrew, the basic language. And it might just be by, listening to music or watching shows. Fauda, if you want to watch Fauda, that probably gives you a good some Hebrew words you can learn. But I think the language is an important thing. And then once you get here, really setting aside time to take Ulpan. So you have two programs. You have the traditional Ulpan program, which has been around for a long time, which is 5 hours a day for 5 days a week for 5 months. And that kind of gives you the basics of the language. And recently, the government also now is subsidizing the cost of private Ulpans, which are more conversational. And that's something that I think I would really encourage you to consider, because you can go to these programs, the schedule is much more flexible. And within a matter of a few weeks, you can have a decent understanding of Hebrew, and you go into the supermarket and you go around and you just feel more comfortable, speaking to people because you have the basics. And then the last thing I want to mention is just take advantage a lot of the resources that are out there. We talked about the Shira Pransky project. We have a Facebook group that's really been phenomenal. It's called the Anglo Support Group in Israel, and I'll send around a link to everybody. But it's really just people coming together, helping people. AACI is a great organization. OU, the OU Center is great. And so there's so many organizations, there's so many resources. I recently put together a guide, 55 tips plus, that you can read. And so I know that the process might be overwhelming and intimidating, but just as I was saying, and as Gary and Rose said, just know that you're joining a family. We're going to take care of you, and you'll figure it out. You'll be okay. It might take a little while, but you'll get there. And so, I realize that I've shared a lot of information, and I really want to encourage you and invite each of you to reach out to me if you need help with your Aliyah planning, to Rose and Gary from a social point of view, to Ayala, and soon Kim's going to be talking about different properties and different opportunities. And I want to encourage you, if you have questions about real estate, to reach out to Kim as well. And before I hand it over to Kim, just as a kind of a quick promotion, if anybody signs up with our services before Pesach, then we'll offer you a discount just as a nice little perk and welcome to Israel. So we'll put our contact information at the end. You can reach out to all of us. We'll be happy to talk to you. And with that, Kim, I'm going to hand it over to you, and I'm going to turn over the slide here.
Great. Thank you so much. It's been so wonderful to listen to everybody. Gary and Rose, you are a true inspiration. Really, just so positive, and it just brings me so much joy when I listen to you, because my parents actually made Aliyah in their 70s, and they followed me. I was the one in Israel. I was the one with the grandchildren, and they really didn't want to be once a year grandparents. And I was very blessed to have them living in Israel. And the medical care, just following up on what Ayala said, they both came with pre-existing illnesses. My father had prostate cancer and my mother had rheumatoid arthritis, and they were treated from day one, from the moment they came in here. It was unbelievable. And they had the best doctors, and most of the doctors, I would say, speak English. And it was never, ever the ones we dealt with, most of them that we dealt with, I was insistent that we had somebody that my parents could communicate with. So one of the questions when I would ask when we were setting up appointments is that we would want somebody who spoke English. And it was interesting enough, most of the doctors we worked with were actually all people who had made Aliyah. So all the doctors, we had South Africans, we had Australians, we had English, and it was really, really very easy, and they received the most incredible care, and even home care when they had surgeries or whatever. As people would come from the kupa to the house to administer blood, whatever it may be, medications, dressing wounds, whatever it was. We just had the most incredible experience with the medical system in Israel. It was really fantastic. And they had a great social life as well. Israel, there are so many different opportunities, and wherever it may be that you decide to go, there are so many changing neighborhoods right now. Rafi mentioned earlier, if you're not necessarily set on a particular location, if you don't have kids or family or friends in a particular area, and it opens up a whole different area of where you want to go. There's so many different places opening up right now that traditionally were more Israeli, that are becoming more Anglo. So some of the stuff that we're going to present you tonight are traditional soft landing communities. However, I'm happy to work with anybody, whatever your budget, to try and figure out where we can find a community. I don't sell properties, I'll sell community, because I believe that a house is just a house. But when you find your community, it's when you find your home. So as Gary and Rose said, they've met so many friends now that they've come to Modin. And I think anybody who's social and willing to put yourself out there. My father used to sit, I live in the old city in the Jewish quarter, and my father used to sit inside the main square in the old city and sit and talk to everybody. I never knew who he was bringing back to the house, inviting over for Shabbat meal. I made new friends through my parents. It's incredible. So it's just so friendly. The bus driver, they never ever took public transportation in South Africa. My parents they never would ever drive because it's on the other side of the road in South Africa. So they were not prepared to even get behind a wheel in Israel. And they were happy to take the local buses, which everywhere you can go. There's the trains are amazing. The local buses are amazing. And the Hebrew, they did not learn Hebrew, and nor do I, by the way. I don't speak, my Hebrew is shocking. So I'm not a good example. One thing I say to people, one of my regrets is that I didn't concentrate on my Ulpan. And I do think, if you're not going to make Aliyah straight away, you're not coming in the next 6 months or the next year, take the time and the opportunity to do some online Ulpan programs. You can actually hire people now one-on-one to do some Ulpan online, which is amazing. You should definitely do that. But you can survive here without Hebrew. Okay, so don't worry about that. I saw there were some questions there about, do you have to speak the language? And the answer is no, but it's always good to, okay. Okay, so just talking about some opportunities, and I just want to stress to you again, this is just some of the stuff that we have available and going on. There are so many different places to go in Israel. There are cranes, as Gary and Rose said, in Modin, if you want to be their neighbors. That's a whole different town we're not even going to cover now, but there is so much construction going on all over Eretz Israel. Wherever you go, there's building opportunities. The projects we're going to be talking about tonight are going to be done within the next, some of them 2022, some 2023. Okay, so, but if people are coming in the next couple of months, we can also help them out. There are rental opportunities as well. For the purpose of this presentation, we are just going to be talking about sales opportunities. Okay, so on the screen, you'll see the German colony. For those of you who know Jerusalem, the German colony is famous for its street Emek Raphaim, which has lots of little cafes and restaurants and just a very central location. We have a building there that is going to be completed in 2023. I have 9 units there. And there are small apartments. These are not traditionally big apartments. They're luxury units, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, anything from, we're looking at, I think the price 70 square meters for the apartment size, and you're looking at just over $1 million, 3.65 million shekels for these apartments, coming with parking and a storage room as well. People like this location, as I said, because it's very close to everything. You can hop on a bus and be in town in 10 minutes. The old city is not far away either. It's just very close to everywhere. Jerusalem is a small city, so it's easy to go from one side to the other within 45 minutes from one side of the place to the other, one side of the town to the other. There's also the tram line. The tram line starts, you can go from one end, from the old city all the way to Mount Herzl. It's also fabulous. So I always believe very important for retirees is to have access to public transportation. Very, very important. Again, if you're not going to drive. Okay, Rafi, let's go on to the next slide. A lot of our clientele are looking to move to Ramat Beit Shemesh because a lot of their children live there. And we have a retirement opportunity in a 55 plus building. This is going to be ready in 2022. And it's in a very central location. If you know Ramat Beit Shemesh, it's by the top part of Beit Shemesh where Best is. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but it's in a very, very good location. And the prices there are starting anything for 1 bedroom at 1.15 million shekels up to just under 1.9 million shekels for a 2 bedroom. And they're going to have facilities there, gym, social activities, a social hall. There's a local community center around the corner. So there's lots of different opportunities happening on the 55 plus building. It's called the Harmony. And we don't have many apartments left actually in this building. So if this is something of interest, you should be in touch with us very, very soon with this project. Okay, Rafi, let's go on to the next one. Okay, another one in the city center. This is in the city center of Jerusalem. This is right by the Tachana Markazit, which is a central bus station. This is in the beginning, the entrance of the city, and close to the train. So if you want to hop on a train and go to Tel Aviv, you can be in Tel Aviv in 30 minutes and get at Ben Gurion Airport in 22 minutes. It's absolutely fabulous. It's also very close to Gan Saka. So you have beautiful views of the park. And you're also close to the famous Machana Yehuda, the Shuk. And this is within 5 minutes walk to the Shuk. So this was a fabulous location. Okay, I have 90 apartments to sell in this complex. It will be ready 2023. And I have a lot of different opportunities depending on your budget. But we're looking at anything from 2.85 million shekels up. And it's just a fabulous project. And in these projects, traditionally, you don't have to put down all the money up front. You're looking at usually putting down between 15 and 20% in the beginning. And then as the building progresses, they require further payments. So it works on like a payment schedule. And just another thing to point out is that when you're buying in a project, you're getting a basic apartment. None of these apartments come with closets. None of them come with appliances. None of them come with light fixtures. So these are things that you need to make sure that you add on to your budget. Very, very important. Okay, let's go on to the next one. By the way, this has been recorded and we will send this out, and we are happy to do one-on-one presentations with anybody after tonight. Okay, I'm very excited about this project. Netanya has always been a big favorite for retirees because it's got such glorious weather. This is a new area of Netanya called Ir Yamim and has become very popular with the Anglo population. There's also a new shul, the Young Israel Shul, and lots of stuff happening here. Traditionally, Netanya, you have to go down a lot of steps or go down an elevator to go down to the beach. Ir Yamim is flat, so you can walk or drive your golf cart down to the beach. It's between 300 and 500 meters from the beach. So it's really absolutely gorgeous. We have some new high-rise buildings that are going up. We have a luxury tower called the Spirit, which is by a fantastic developer in Israel, one of the best. And we have 165 units, 50 of them are left for sale. And this is going to be ready December 2022. And it's a gorgeous facility. It comes with a swimming pool, a gym. It's a secured building. It's just fabulous. Now, these apartments are bigger than the ones in Jerusalem that we mentioned before in Ramat Beit Shemesh. They are about 135 square meters. And the starting prices on them are 3.1 million shekels. So we're talking about just under $1 million for these. Okay, so they are about 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms. And at this stage, we can probably still plan. There is a floor plan on the slide. I don't know if you can all see it, but we can probably play around with the floor plan according to your needs as well. But Yamim, I did a webinar about Yamim. If you look up Kim Bash Real Estate on YouTube, we have a series called Find Me a Community in Israel. And Yamim is one of the Zooms we did. We also did one on Modin. We also did one on Ramat Beit Shemesh. We have a 2-part series of Jerusalem as well. So have a look at that as well, and you can hear what people have to say about the community. What else?
There's a short video here, Kim. Do you want me to play the short video?
Yes, let's show the video. This is on Yamim's new project. Is there sound?
Can you hear?
I can't hear any sound, but you get the visuals.
Mm.
These are obviously just renderings, but they are a very high-end developer. And I can send you more information about that project. But we have projects all over Israel, whether you want to be in Ashkelon, if you want to be in Renana, if you want to go up north, Nahariya, Carmiel. There is so much happening in Israel right now. It's really unbelievable, the amount of real estate that is being built. We are waiting for all of you to come home. So I encourage everybody to reach out. One thing, if you don't mind, Rafi, I just want to quickly run through, just very quickly. When you're buying in Israel, there are closing costs. Like any purchase, even in America, you have certain costs that you need to make sure that you put on top of your budget when you're thinking about buying in Israel. The closing costs are as follows. You have something called purchase tax. Purchase tax is acquisition tax. And there are discounts, but it's anything from 0.5 to 5% on top of your purchase price, okay? And then there's realtors fees, which are 2% plus VAT, and then lawyers fees, which is 1% plus VAT. So you need to consider between 8 to 10% on top of your purchase price when buying in Israel. So reach out to us. We're happy to have a free consultation with you to find you the best place and the best community. And again, we look forward to working with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kim. And one thing just to add quickly, and then we'll get to questions now, is we also have a network of people and professionals that you can work with. So if you need a banker to help you, or if you need a lawyer to help you, or a tax advisor, you can reach out to us and we can put you in touch with people. Anything you need about your transaction, your real estate transaction, we have contacts and we can refer you to them. So with that, I'm going to put up the contact information here so everybody has it. And I'll go through some questions. I know we kind of run into the end of the hour, but we'll extend it a little bit. Gary, so Rose and Gary, the first question to you, with Hebrew, did you come with a level of Hebrew, or how do you feel about, the concern that people have about Hebrew, and what would your feedback be?
Okay. We basically came with no level of Hebrew. We went to Ulpan. I was a little more successful at Ulpan than Rose was. I am also not bashful though. So when I'm out on the street, I'm learning this. It's called Ulpan Berachov, Ulpan in the street. Gas station attendants, clerks in stores, my fellow gardeners who are all Israeli. So I'm faced with my other 9 gardeners in my garden project. They're all Israeli. So we go back and forth on that. I pick up enough of the language so that I can kind of get along. Rose is totally English, and she gets along.
Totally English. I actually had more Hebrew before I came. I lost it, and
She lost some English too.
I managed very well.
Okay.
To speak Hebrew, you have to be around people who speak Hebrew. Because if you learn it in Opan and you are not using it, you're not going to retain it.
And in our neighborhood, it's basically an English-speaking neighborhood.
Right. Okay. I have a few people that asked about if they're vaccinated, what does that mean in terms of bidud, and how does all that play out?
Okay, that's a really good question. It's first of all, just to clarify with anything related to Corona, it's everything I'm saying is valid for the next 60 seconds, and then we'll go from there. But as of right now, how it works, if you're vaccinated in Chutz La'aretz, Israel currently does not have a policy to recognize vaccinations from out of Israel. The reason for that is because unlike our system here that is digitalized and everything centralized, because you're coming from a place where it's not, there is a concern that someone can forge a vaccination record. I think that is going to change once we get closer to the summer. So just keep your eye out for that. But as of right now, Israel doesn't recognize foreign vaccines. So what happens is when you land in Israel, they're going to tell you to go into bidud, to go into quarantine, and you can then go. You're allowed to be released from bidud either to get a corona test, or in the case if you were vaccinated, to go get an antibody test. And if your antibody test comes back positive, you send that to the Ministry of Health and they will release you from bidud. But just understand that upon arrival, even if you're fully vaccinated, there will be a few days where you'll be required to be in quarantine before you do get out to get that antibody test, get the results, send it in, all of that type of stuff. So that's just something everyone should be aware of. And again, I finished my sentence and we'll see what happens when we finish with this and what rule changes. So.
Okay. Rose, somebody asked about coming as a single person. I don't know if you have in Hadassah, a number of single women. I know that one of the first clients that we helped make Aliyah was a retired professor who moved to Beersheba, a single woman, and she's thriving. She's so happy. And so, Rose, maybe you can talk a little bit about your circle of friends and people that are coming single.
We have many single people, mostly women. We have a few men, and they're a part of the chevra. Do not hesitate because you're single. You will make friends and be included, and it will be a good transition for you. That's if you reach out also. People will reach out to you initially. It works both ways, but you'll be fine.
Okay. Somebody was asking here about if they're coming just for a pilot trip with insurance, what would you recommend that they get in terms of coverage?
If you're coming just for a pilot trip, and so really just a short amount of time, you're going to have to get some sort of traveler's insurance. If you reach out to us, we can give you a few names and numbers. I'm not going to list all the numbers off the top of my head of people to contact. We can't get you insurance. We can tell you who to get you insurance. It'll be through, what you're going to do is will be through a private insurance agency, but I recommend especially for the older population to check with your current insurance and see if they'll cover you abroad, because traveler's insurance in Israel is limited by age. They don't cover people over 75 or 80, depending on the insurance. So it's just something to keep in mind. Again, you can contact us. I'll give you recommendations of places to contact for traveler's insurance, but you're going to want to call basically a private insurance place that does traveler's insurance. Alternatively, like I said, you can speak to your current insurance plan, and there are oftentimes, this is particularly true of U.S. private insurances, that very good U.S. private insurances will offer coverage overseas, and then you're set for that.
Good. Kim, there are a couple of questions here about real estate. One is about Shabbat elevators. Do most of apartment buildings have Shabbat elevators? And the other one is asking just about housing units with larger rooms.
Okay, so all the new construction has Shabbat elevators. I haven't been into one new project that does not have a Shabbat elevator. And the second question, what was the second question?
Which is if you can talk a little bit about, are there the size of the rooms that we talked about, the apartments that we talked about, is that typical, or are there other projects that have bigger rooms? I know there's a lot of options, but maybe you can just talk general about that.
It reminds me of one of my clients who I took to see one of the apartments, and he said, Kim, this is the size of my bedroom, the whole house. So, okay, it's definitely a reframe. and taking the space, and you can't bring all your furniture. It's not going to fit into Israeli size apartments. But in some of the new construction where you have the possibility of playing with the floor plan, if something is, for example, a 3-bedroom, you can maybe make it into a large 2-bedroom. So what I always say to people, if you're buying on paper, pre-construction, you should actually measure out the apartment in one of your existing rooms in your house that you live in. So it gives you an idea of what the actual space looks like. Also, when they sell real estate in Israel, we sell rooms. So if you see something advertised as 4 rooms, it means 3 bedrooms plus a living room and a dining room usually. So don't get confused by that.
Okay, thank you. There's a question here about making Aliyah without having kids and family and friends. Gary and Rose are very fortunate to have family here. And the question is, is it doable? And I can tell you that it's absolutely doable. In fact, a lot of the people that we help come to us because they don't have the friends and family, or if they do, they don't want to keep going back to them and keep asking them questions and bothering them. And so you can definitely come. And that again gives you the flexibility. If you don't have family here, you can really choose where you want to live based on your preferences. And so my advice is going through the same process, really prioritizing what's the most important thing for you. Is it budget? Is it location? Is it convenience? Is it an Israeli or an Anglo community? And that will help you narrow it down. And then just reach out to us, and we can talk to you and kind of guide you through the process. Somebody's asking here about kind of the coverage they have in the States, whether it's Medicare or does that come into play here at all or no?
Medicare will not cover anything overseas, but you can in many cases keep your Medicare so that if you do travel back frequently, you'll still be covered in the US. But the insurances that will continue to cover you overseas are very specific private insurance. Medicare, once you leave America, is not going to help you here.
Okay. And then Kim, there's a question here about rental apartments. Do rental apartments typically also come bare boned, or do they have furniture? Gary and Rose are shaking their heads or nodding their heads. So yeah, so usually, Kim, I'll hand it over to you.
So it really does depend. Every situation is different. You can get partially furnished, you can get completely empty where you have to put in your stovetop even. So if you're going into a new building, that somebody's bought, for example, as an investment, there may be nothing in the apartment at all, besides the bare bones. So each situation is going to be different. Make sure you have a real estate agent who's going to, make sure that they give you all the accurate information so you don't arrive and, have any unpleasant surprises. So it's just very, very important. A lot of people who are bringing, for example, a lift over, a container over, will have a couple of weeks where they may have to go into some sort of short-term rental before their container arrives. So they may not have everything available to them in the beginning. But I can tell you now from experience, the communities are unbelievable. If you are in a situation where you're going into a house that does not have, I've been on social media saying, I've got people arriving, they have no beds, they have no linens, their stuff stuck, blah, 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 and we've done it. So don't be afraid. We'll all come together if anybody is in trouble.
I really just want to add to that, not speaking as the healthcare person right now, but just as an Ola who came here and living in a community where there are a lot of Olim. I'm really telling you, and I know I'm younger than some of the people here, but in any community I know where there are Olim, if they hear that someone's moving and coming, you have within 5, you can't sign up in time to make a meal for them or to provide something for them.
Absolutely.
People are really here to help, especially when you're, first arriving.
Because most people have gone through something similar.
Exactly.
Right. I love it. There's a question here from people who are Toshavim Chozrim, people that have come back, that have lived in the States for many years and now coming back to Israel. How does that impact their, their eligibility and ability to get healthcare? Okay,
this is probably the most important question that could be asked here tonight. If you're considered Toshav Choser, that means that effectively you have been out of Israel for more than 5 years of your adult life. That means that your residency status has lapsed. But that in Israel, once you return, there is a 6-month waiting period until your insurance can be reinstituted. Now, Bituach Leumi has a way to get out of this. They get mad at me that I call it a fee, but I'm just going to call it like it is. There's a fee that you pay. At this point now, it's gone up to, I think, around 12,400 shekel or so. You pay that fee. You fill out a form that says that your center of life is in Israel. And with that, they will waive this 6-month period and they will reinstitute your Kupat Chalim immediately. The catch with this, and if you are a Toshav Choser, please reach out to us in advance and let us review your situation and advise you. The catch with it, in lovely fine print at the bottom, is that approval of accepting this form and this fee is based on whatever secretary is there that day. It's subject to their approval. Now, this is very classic Israel. As you will come to learn, secretaries rule the country in any office. They're in charge, and what they say goes. So it goes for the same for Bituach Leumi. Now, I would say most of the time it's fine. Someone who pays the fee and really proves that Israel is the center of their life, there's not a problem to get it waived. The problem sort of starts when someone has pretty extensive medical issues and significant pre-existing conditions. We have had, unfortunately, a number of cases where the person has been rejected because the Bituach Leumi claims that they're coming back just for medical care. And in that case, people can get stuck. So that's why I recommend, if you are a Toshav Choser, to reach out to us, because we can kind of assess based on what your life in Israel is going to be here, based on how long you've been out of Israel, based on a lot of different factors. Obviously, we can't guarantee, but we can help you assess what the risks are with paying that fee. And if there's an option for you to, as an alternative, instead of paying the fee, to buy traveler's insurance or private insurance for 6 months. And then that's another great alternative if either you can't afford the upfront fee or you're worried that you will be rejected from it. And by the way, if you're rejected, they don't give you your money back. So just to be aware, there's another option to pay for private insurance or traveler's insurance for up to 6 months before. And then once you've been in Israel for 6 months, you go to Bituach Leumi, the National Insurance Institute, your residency is reinstated and you will automatically be able to rejoin Kupat Chalim. But please, if you're an individual in this situation, please, please, please reach out to us. It's a case-by-case type of thing, and it's a really, really important issue, especially again for this crowd, because again, the traveler's insurance do have age limits, so you want to make sure you're insured.
Great, thanks so much. Thank you, everyone. Well, the time is up now, and so Gary and Rose, I want to thank you. Ayala and Kim, thank you so much. And really, to all of you who are listening and watching, we want to encourage you to move forward with your plans, and we want to let you know that you're welcome here. And it's, I think we all share the same thought that this was probably one of the best decisions that we have all made. And I think for you guys, when you get to Israel, I think you will feel the same way. So I want to wish you a Shavua Tov and a Chodesh Tov, a good week and a good month. Be safe and be healthy, and reach out to us if we can help you in any way. Don't be bashful. We're here to help and be happy to talk to you. Take care, everyone. Be well.
Thank you, Rafi, for hosting.
Yes, I want to thank you, and I want to say this: when we made Aliyah, your company, your business didn't exist. Where were you when we needed you? And the other thing I would say is, I was in a garden center a year after we made Aliyah, talking to a young lady who'd been in the States, but she was back in Israel again. And we discussed my age and when I made Aliyah. So I said, I'm 76. She says, well, you're here a year. What took you so long? That's my word to everybody. What took you so long?
Wonderful. Be well, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bless. Thank you.